All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for coming today. I know a couple of people are still joining in. Really excited to introduce you to Yash Barber. He is going to be presenting on consumer demand spillover from supercharger stations. This is some really interesting research that I'm excited to dive into. I was kind of reading through the working paper, and I'll let him do most of the introductions and kind of kick it off from here. But as a reminder, we have a Q&A feature, so feel free to ask questions. We'll make sure to answer any of those questions at the end. And that's it. We'll be recording this seminar and be sending it out afterwards. So if you do have to leave early, don't worry. We're still going to send this out, and so you'll get to kind of see the whole thing. But with that, I'll hand it over to you, Yash. Feel free to take it away.
Thank you so much, Evan. So good morning, good afternoon, good noon to people. This work is called Recharging Retail. It's co-authored with Gordon Birch at Boston University. And the broad idea of all of this came around thinking about how online platforms have started to interact with offline locations. So what I'm talking about is we've seen, like, as online networks have really grown. So for example, Amazon is, the major e-commerce outlet for most people in the Western Hemisphere right now, and it's come up with stuff like this. So like an Amazon hub, which is an offline location which stores and offline spaces are sort of being encouraged to host. And the benefit for them to do this is you get connected to the Amazon network, you get put on the Amazon map, and the resulting footfall from returns or interaction with this offline location could help you leverage benefits from this large online network of consumers. Tesla makes the same argument when they try to sell you the idea of installing a supercharger in your commercial location, in your retail parking lot, that having a Tesla supercharger in there could potentially lead to good spillover effects for your retail business. And this is not really new, right? We've had similar examples. If we go back through the history of retail, you have kiosks for things like Red DVD or all of these sort of online providers which never had an offline presence, but they would partner with existing offline locations and offer that service or an extension of their service in the last mile or the first mile delivery problems. We're seeing something similar with e-scooters, of course, like where a e-scooter is hosted, where a hub is hosted. You can become an e-scooter retail partner with Lime. And then there's the promise of these people are going to come to your location looking for an e-scooter. They might stop by for a coffee or something. So the broad question generally becomes, does hosting the offline presence of an online network, what is the value that it gives to the host? There is some value, but how quantifiable is it, and under what conditions does it manifest? Right, and this question becomes more interesting once we start thinking about the EV, the electric vehicle space, because currently there's about 40,000 public EV charging stations in the United States. As of 2021, with the State of the Union, President Biden gave out and this notion of Electrify America, the plan is to go to 500,000 EV charging stations. And the way we've been thinking about EV charging stations is, like, where do we optimally place them, right? And what is best for charging, what is more energy optimal, what is more energy efficient. But one way of thinking about this is how do we place them in local geographies, in local retail spaces, so that we give the most optimal impact for the surrounding business as well. And this, for this particular study, we are going to take the examples of Tesla superchargers and then focus in on how these partnerships or how Tesla superchargers have impacted local businesses around them. So, a little bit about what these things are. So these are basically collections of about 8 to 10 stalls installed in parking lots. So it could be in a Walmart, it could be in a regular old pit stop, a strip mall, etc. And these superchargers, Tesla bears generally the cost of installation. It's about $100,000 per sources like TechCrunch. And customers prior to 2018 were charged a fee to charge these, were charging for free, but after 2018, most new Tesla customers sort of pay as they go to use these superchargers. These superchargers are different from charging at home because on average, a supercharger can charge up to charge your car fully in 20 minutes, especially if your car was a model manufactured after 2019. And on the what's sort of the online aspect of this is on your onboard computer on in a Tesla car or in through the Tesla app, you can actually see where the nearest charger is, how much charge will it take for my car to get to that location. You can also see in the app how occupied that particular charger is. So occupancy sort of matters in the sense of how many stalls are free, but also in terms of rapid charging works out of a battery system. So if a lot of cars have been charging there, your charging might not be as rapid immediately. So you want to go to a system which has relatively good availability. And this sort of is comparable to a couple of things that we've seen in the past in terms of online-offline network interactions, right? Before I move on from the screen, also notice that on the Tesla app, you can see what are the kind of amenities and the facilities available at a particular charger location. So you have like dining, you have coffee shops, you have some sort of retail, you have good Wi-Fi. And this sort of you're preemptively making this decision while you're in the car or even when you're looking at your phone as to which point should I go to charge, when should I go, and what else can I do while I'm waiting there. Right. And this is where the online offline interaction is sort of different from something like, a drop off facility for Amazon, that you actually have about 20 to 25 minutes to spend on average. And so, what do you do with that time while you're waiting there? And thinking of online offline networks in general, think of how we have so many different apps, we have so many different services that we use. Like this is the UPS map when you're looking for a UPS drop box or a drop off location. These are locations in and around Madison. Similarly, you have something similar for FedEx. And these are in either in retail locations or they are in next to a coffee shop or the lobby of a commercial building. So by just providing you the information of where these things are, you sort of put whatever around it on this map and sort of increase the access to it. And this is something which retailers need to consider when hosting any sort of offline presence of an online network. And it would seem largely that these benefits could be positive. Like I'll host a Tesla supercharger and it's all going to be great, right? Like what's the downside of this? So here's something to consider. Like Tesla supercharging is not popular with everybody, especially if you don't have a Tesla. There's something called as icing of superchargers, which is the placement of internal combustion engine vehicles in a manner at a Tesla supercharger so that you disrupt supercharging. You could generally be, you have different kinds of opinions about how electric vehicles should be used. But the other way is basically you are cheesed off that now this parking is occupied with these Tesla superchargers. And this was my favorite store to go to. And my parking is sort of reduced because you've taken up these 10 to 12 spaces for Tesla or any kind of EV charging. And there's been instances of what is called as cord cutting, vehicle vandalism, etc., which is something to consider for these retailers. So on the one hand, there's the promise of higher visibility in an online network. There's assured proximate traffic, right? Like people are going to come to this and most likely they will spill over into your business. There's also the promise of a slightly higher income group of customers. Because especially looking at Teslas or the early electric vehicles that came out, this was a higher income group. So they might be more likely to spend more, and this is something your store might be interested in. But on the other hand, there is the occupation of commercial real estate without any guarantee of spillovers. Yes, people come in, but they probably don't ever get out of the car. So is this going to play out? Or there's the irritation of existing clientele. Like you have an existing group of people who are, say, coming up to this Wawa or this Quick Mart or whatever, and the Tesla person is never going to leave their vehicle, but I gave them 8 to 10 parking spaces and reduce my parking lot. So this is the sort of tension which sort of motivates this specific question of how do Tesla chargers impact surrounding businesses and under what conditions. And I'm not going to go into the literature really, but this is just to say that there's a bunch of stuff that is looked at EV charger placement. And the focus has always been optimization of location by wait times, degree of access, efficiency, coverage, demand, what kind of people will have access. Do we have one charging station every 50 miles? How do we do this? But the broad question of externalities as to how will this impact what's around an EV charger is sort of underexplored. So think about this, like you decide that these two city blocks probably need a EV charger, but you still want to decide, do I put it in the Taco Bell parking lot, or do I put it in the McDonald's parking lot, or do I put it in the parking lot of a fancy niche retail store, right? And that is something which hopefully both an EV charging network is going to be interested in and the retailers are going to be interested in. So based on this, let's get directly into the data and empirics. So the first thing that we did was we wanted to capture a spatiotemporal variation in the arrival of superchargers. So we focused on the US market. There's about 1585 superchargers that were launched between November of 2012 to March of 2022. And there's a lot of chargers called destination chargers, which I'm not going to focus on, which are these lower powered chargers, which are very prevalent within cities and office parking lots. What I'm focusing on is superchargers, which lead to rapid charging and which are sort of worth the while of traveling to charge your car, right? And so we're going to focus on two chargers, urban superchargers, which are around 72 kilowatt hours, and rapid superchargers, which go from 120, 150 to 250 since 2019. So what you see on the map is on the black is all the rapid superchargers, and in red is the urban superchargers. Urban superchargers are generally slower. While rapid takes about 20 minutes to fully charge a vehicle, urban can take somewhere between 50 minutes to a little more than an hour. And urban superchargers are present in smaller clusters of 4 or 5. Rapid ones are present in clusters of 8 to 10. And so we get details from when these superchargers start arriving in the country. So for every dot that you see on the map, we know exactly when it started. And this is based on Tesla Motor Club forums, Tesla driver forums, where people start reporting, hey, this supercharger is now operational in my area. And this is sort of the distribution of the arrival dates of these superchargers. Now, the second question becomes, yes, you know where these Tesla superchargers are coming in, but how do you sort of determine what is a business next to it which could potentially have an impact? So we go to the Tesla website, and for each supercharger, they list what are the services and amenities they recognize around a particular charger. We got all of that information, and then we found out the top 25 most popular brands that co-occur around a Tesla supercharging location. And when I say around, it's around 200 meters around a supercharger. So this is the distribution of that. And so you basically have a lot of convenience stores, grocery stores, a bunch of quick service restaurants, some full service restaurants. And so this is the like the distribution of per brand, what is the number of superchargers that they approximate to. So Starbucks is around most superchargers, and then you have Wawa, Sheetz, Target, and so on. Right, so these are the guys to focus on. And then, of course, we turn to SafeGraph data. So we're looking at monthly visitation data of all the places for these 25 brands. So that's about 107 1,000 places across the United States. And what you see in this map is the grocery stores and the restaurants. So you have the grocery stores in red and you have the restaurants in black. And so this is data around nearly 2,900 counties from 21 million devices, 4.5 million observations. So you know what's coming. What's coming is we're basically going to be seeing that the arrival of a supercharger in proximity to a location, what does it do to that location, right? But obviously, you don't want to look at every subway. You don't want to look at every McDonald's, because the McDonald's, which is close to a supercharging location, you want to basically find a McDonald's that looks like that McDonald's and then compare the movement in whatever outcomes you're interested in between these two locations. And that is exactly what we do. So for every place that gets potentially treated, or which is within 200 meters of a supercharger, and we tried different distances. This 200 meters is based off of urban transportation studies as to how much will an average American walk. So you basically end up getting, for every treated location, you try to go and find an untreated location, which is from the same brand within the same county, very similarly placed in the geography of the city, and shows similar treatment, similar dependent variable trends 3 months prior to treatment. So we take those 107,000 places, we reduce them to about 1,500 places, 756 out of which are treated and the rest are control. So what I'm talking about is, you pick a Taco Bell, say in Riverside, California, you find another Taco Bell in Riverside, California, and they show these comparable trends. And the line that you see there is basically the point where the stuff in red got treated, and you basically want to compare the trends across these two. Similarly, here's an example of a Panda Express, and spatially speaking, here are two examples from Seattle and New York, where the stuff inside the circle is basically a Starbucks that was treated. Here, this location has got a Tesla urban supercharger, and we're going to compare it to this Starbucks, which is going to be the control group. Same goes for Dunkin' Donut here in New York. Right, so it's going to be a multiple differences in differences model, where a monthly outcome per store is going to be modeled as a function of whether or not you had a supercharger active. You're going to have a bunch of controls. You're going to have a store fixed effect. You're going to have a month-year fixed effect. I see some. All right. Okay. No, that was Evan's comment in the Q&A. Okay. All right, so you have a month-year fixed effect. You also have a month-year into state fixed effect. And this is to basically account for if there are any temporal trends happening within the state, which might be driving the effects. Now, keep in mind, because we basically have a control location for every treated location, you don't really have to worry about that. So because this data is going to have stuff around COVID, it's going to have stuff around other events that might happen in a city. And that's not really going to matter, because these two locations are going to be both treated by those things. But this will account for any broader state level trends too. So you have monthly within store panel, and here are the first set of regressions. So I'm going to walk you through this. So we basically divide up the results into 3 subsamples of panels. So the first is putting all the chargers together. The second set is basically just focusing on rapid charger locations and their control locations. The third is going to be only urban charger locations and just their control locations. And I'll talk about why. So then we get some data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is going to control for some socioeconomic trends, which vary within months. And that is going to be the control. And the box you see highlighted in red is got both the OLS and the Poisson results. So we're basically seeing a 4% increase in visitors on average. When we're looking at visitor counts as outcomes, we then split it up by rapid charges and urban charges, and we see that the effect basically comes from rapid charges. and not urban chargers. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. And you also see that the effect is it's not only that the number of visitors increase, but the number of visits also increases. So it's like newer people coming in and people are coming in more. Right. And so rapid chargers are basically 150, 120, 250 kilowatt hours. So these are like fast charging, 20 minutes. Urban chargers were the 72 kilowatt hours. So this is like slower charging. This takes about longer, and there are fewer of these chargers available at a particular location. Why does this matter? Right. So we think what's going on is, and I'll show you some of the data to support this going ahead, is that these rapid charges are sort of worth driving up to, right? Because if you're going for a weekend road trip, getting a rapid charge done so that you can drive about 300 miles, which is the total length that one rapid charge will let you do, is sort of worth it. Whereas urban chargers most likely get visited when you don't drive up to an urban charger just for the purpose of charging. You have other business there. You happen to be in the neighborhood. You get your vehicle charged while you're waiting. So it's not generating new business. So let's look into a couple of other outcomes here. So we also look at do people hang around more? So there's data on median dwell times. They don't seem to do that. Do people come from longer distances? So it's in the right direction, but not statistically significant. And it sort of makes sense that you go to the charger in, like, not exactly in your neighborhood, but the average value of distance from home is around 5 kilometers. So 5 kilometers is sort of a reasonable distance you might drive up to. Then, excuse me, we have, so SafeGraph has got a lot of cool data on where people come from. So this is by census block group. So we marry our data with data from the census to get a sense of what is the demographic of the people that are coming in, right? So we get the weighted average median household income, and we see that like for per location, per month, we can estimate that value. And you can see how wealthy is the average customer household that is coming in. And we do see that's increasing. Not by much, it's like about $390. But remember, this is being driven by just 4% increase in visits. So the people that are coming in are substantially more wealthy than the people that were coming to these locations, hinting at what Tesla's promise was, that we'll get you richer people who own Teslas. That might be happening here.
Hey, Yash, I actually want to chime in with two questions that came in before we moved far from it. So I don't know if you can see these Q&As, but there's two specifically around some of the control variables. The first one being what control variables either at the store or month level are available. So maybe we can start there.
Yeah, so let me go back here. We are directly using store fixed effects. So I don't know any other control variables that you need there. And the month level. So yes, at the IT level, I'd say the two things that we do control for is labor force, the size of the labor force, and unemployment percentage. So these are both socioeconomic indicators, and these are basically coming at the county level. So they're not exactly at the store level, but in the local geography, what is happening, which is changing in terms of socioeconomic variables. And I have another question here, which says, yes, the rollout of rapid chargers is staggered. Are there any instances in which control Starbucks become treated afterwards? Because no, we do not use those controls. So we only use sort of potentially never treated controls. Let me show you a couple of other things. So there's generally an interest in what kind of places have differential effects manifesting. So this is an example of a Tesla supercharger location, and it's got a bunch of stuff around it. And now we get into whether the bunch of stuff that is around it is going to make a difference or not, right? And so here I just want you to focus on column number 7, and I've got a bunch of moderating variables here. I'll walk you through them. The first thing that we look at is, does the distance from the charger matter? So even within the same parking lot, I'm 100 meters away versus I am like 150 meters away. Does that matter? Does the past consumer income matter? So places which were being visited by relatively well-to-do people versus not. Does the number of amenities matter? So this is going to be coming from OpenStreetMaps as to what else is around in terms of, do you have a post office, a police station, a car wash, and other things that these kind of locations generally tend to have. Does distance from the city center matter? Because are we talking about peripheral charging locations like people have, like if you look at urban transportation and commute literature, this is an important factor. And lastly, whether it's going to be a grocery store, a quick service restaurant, a full service restaurant, does that matter? So just to interpret this better, these are the average marginal effects. And what you're basically seeing is that more the number of amenities, the greater the impact. Lesser the distance from the charger, greater the impact. And this basically, like at around 100 meters, the effect sort of goes away. So, your average American will not walk more than 100 meters away from their car to get what they want to get. Distance from the city center matters. The spots that are further out matter more. And past, like the spots that were getting customers that were less well-to-do see more greater of a lift. So this is probably more of a ceiling effect. And lastly, the impact seems to be greater for grocery or convenience stores than it is for quick service restaurants or sit-down restaurants, which sort of also makes sense because this is slightly quicker, although this difference is not statistically significant. Then we do a bunch of robustness checks. People who are familiar with the DID literature will recognize some of this. So we do counterfactual estimation, which is basically you use a synthetic control to generate counterfactuals for every treated location. And so basically what you're seeing is what is the treatment effect over time. So you don't see any significant pre-treatment trends. We look at a bunch of staggered difference in difference literature, which has recently come out. And this is basically just showing you under different kinds of estimation checks, does this result hold? And it does seem to hold, peaks at around 10 months, then seems to go down. One of the reasons we believe it might be going down is the timing of these things, especially in the post period. There's a lot of COVID going on, right? So yes, people are willing to get out of the cars and do stuff, but maybe COVID is going to dampen that effect. If we throw out the data after, say, like months 10, it does seem to be a stable effect. But again, this is sort of something to dive into more. So correlation is not causation, but a couple of more things. We wanted to check, in terms of mechanisms, what is going on. So there are a couple of two other things that we find. Number one is because you're able to segregate visits by device type, we see that when we model the function of visits that are coming from iOS versus Android, the number of visits coming from iOS significantly increase around superchargers. Why would that be? A lot of Tesla users seem to also use Apple products, much more so than Android products. The other thing is the supercharger effects are much stronger on weekends than on weekdays. And this is a plot of the busyness of a Tesla supercharger location from Google Places. And basically, a lot of people try to do a bunch of supercharging on the weekend. And this is what anecdotal evidence from these Tesla Motor Club forums, etc., also suggests that you generally don't always supercharge. You supercharge for a weekend grocery visit or a weekend road trip, because otherwise you are more than happy to just charge at home for 6 hours, and that's fine, right? So generally, EV charging stations generate positive spillovers for nearby business. Spillovers indicate a significant shift in clientele. What's interesting is that convenient but slow charging doesn't always attract more than usual business. It's the rapid charging that matters. And this sort of matters. I'll come to the limitations as to why this is something to think about more. Not all stores have a homogeneous impact. And then we also do some economic impact calculations that if you translate this visit to as if it was instead of a visit, people were just spending more per transaction, this is what the money would be. Couple of things to worry about. Visits are only proxy for revenue. Now, of course, SafeGraph has spend data. That's where we're going next with this. There's SIPA issues. So do controls in the same geo get impacted? So I'm looking at a control location, which is Starbucks next to this, probably treated Starbucks. Is there cannibalization of business? We actually ran tests for that. That's not happening. Endogeneity in the timing of the supercharger opening, that's always going to be a concern with observational studies. One thing to think about is how Tesla might be different from other EV charging networks. So Teslas are generally more expensive, they are much more techy, the charging is much more rapid than other EV charging networks. So to give you an example, the average charger that you see at your Walmart or other locations, it's got around 50 kilowatt hours of power. Here, the supercharger that we're looking at, the lowest one started at 72, and then they go up to 250, which is extremely fast and rapid charging. So it is going to be interesting to see how this manifests with other networks. Tesla is now opened up to other EV vehicles. These effects are still going to hold. Impact is dependent on the network size. So currently the supercharging network for Tesla is huge. As the other charging networks grow, this will be something to consider. I see a question: how do you get the data for the location of top 25 brand stores? So we basically first get the location of the superchargers, and then we figure out what are the top 25 brands, and then we get all the locations for those 25 brands across the United States, and then we map which of these locations are proximate to the chargers. All right. So that was my 30-minute mark. And of course, happy to take more questions.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I'll leave a couple seconds here for people to type in or ask or raise their hand, and I can actually unmute them if they want to ask questions directly. But I want to say thank you for presenting. That was awesome. And like I said, we'll be recording this and sharing it as well for anyone who attended, and for anyone who wants to share this with others in the future. I'd also like to say thanks to everyone who attended. You guys are, my early Dewey users, and I really appreciate you guys being on the platform. And we have a lot of big things coming in the new year in terms of new data sets that will be available on the platform. And so I thank you for being some of the early users, and I'm always open for feedback too. So as you think about new data sets that would help your research, always feel free to reach out, and I'll try my best to get those on the platform. But I think we'll wrap it there. Yash, again, thank you so much. It was really great to have you. And
well, while I have you here, Evan, I don't know when and where you want to do this, but this is the second thing that we've been working on with SafeGraph data. That paper is also up. So if we want to talk about this again sometime. So we're basically looking at what is the impact of these kind of social identity flags on things like Google Places and Yelp on like visitation at stores.
Oh, nice.
So
I'm curious, what Yelp data are you using in this?
So Yelp has got similar stuff about like whether or not a business is Black owned, whether or not a business is female owned, Asian owned. Let's see, I don't have that slide up here, but it's basically like when you exhibit a particular kind of social identity, how does it impact your business? Does it change the demographic of who comes? And we've also run a bunch of experiments around this now to see what kind of people change and why.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I'd love to dive into this in the future. I'm actually really curious in some of the data you use for that. Awesome. Well, I think we'll end it there. Thanks again. And yeah, we'll be following up with everyone who attended with the webinar recording shortly. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.